So today's date is March 30th, 2025. We are having an Israeli Palestinian Confederation simulation. We are proposing a federal government for the people of Israel and Palestine, one government for the entire area that would include Gaza, the West Bank, and Israel, 14 million people. A government that would be responsible to the people in Israel, Palestine. A government that would put people first and not land first. We are proposing a secular democratic government with 3 branches in the government: a legislative branch with 300 parliament members, an executive branch with president and vice president, rotating Palestinians and Israelis, and a judicial branch which will have jurisdiction over issues relating to the federal government and the laws of the federal government and the Constitution of the federal government. If you go to our website at ipconfederation.org, and you can read the Constitution in 3 languages, in English, Arabic, and Hebrew. The Constitution has a preamble. It has several articles divided by, starting with the legislative branch with 300 parliament members. It describes specifically who the parliament members are, how they are elected in Israel, Palestine, and what is their function, and what and that they have to pledge allegiance to the federal government. In other words, in order to be a member of the parliament, you have to pledge allegiance to the Constitution of the federal government. The same thing for the president and vice president, and you have to abandon all publicly, all loyalty to the Israeli or the Palestinian government. You can still be an Israeli citizen, but in order to be part of the parliament, you have to abandon your allegiance to the Israeli or the Palestinian government, and you'll have to swear allegiance to the common federal government, whether you are a Palestinian or Israelis. So we are simulating this today, how it will function and how it will make peace, and what will be the relationship between the federal government and the Israeli and the Palestinian governments. We are not proposing dismantling the Israeli or the Palestinian governments. We are not proposing a merger of the 2 governments. We are proposing an independent and separate government from the government of Israel and Palestine, and that would be common to the people of Israel and Palestine, and will be in competition with the Israeli and the Palestinian government, and from our perspective will be the only legitimate government in Israel, Palestine. Today's guest is Raz-Chen Morris. Professor Chen Morris teaches in the History Department of the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. He is the academic director of the Martin Buber Society of Fellows. He obtained his master's degree in the history of medieval and Renaissance science and a doctorate from Tel Aviv University. Professor Chen Morris' career included teaching at several prestigious institutions, including the Bezalel Academy of Arts and Design in Jerusalem, Tel Aviv University, Bar Ilan University, Seminar HaKibbutzim, and the IASA High School in Jerusalem. I met with Professor Chen Morris, and we decided on what legislation we will speak about in today's simulation. On April 13th, we will have Professor Smadar Ben Natan. She is a professor at the University of Oregon She was an attorney in Israel before her academic career. She is a legal scholar of human rights, criminal justice, and armed conflict, an expert on Israel-Palestine. On April 27, we are going to have an open discussion giving you the opportunity to challenge the merit, the purpose, and the feasibility of a federal government in Israel-Palestine. You'll be able to ask your questions, and if you need clarifications, this is the time that you will be able to ask as many questions, and we encourage as many questions. We always encourage as many questions about our formula for peace. On May 11, we will have Udi Aloni. He is a filmmaker, a writer, and an artist whose work focuses on the interrelations between art, politics, and technology and theology, in Israel-Palestine. I want to remind you of our $10,000 This Land is Your Land competition. If you are an artist, a singer, if you are in a band or a group that sings, you're welcome to submit your recording of This Land is Your Land. We have a license from the owner of the song, originated by Woody Guthrie, and we have to use the original music, but they gave us the authorization to change the wording of the song to fit Israel-Palestine. So the winner of this competition will get $10,000. You have until the end of the year to submit your song, but I suggest you do it as soon as possible, because you will get an opportunity to get more hits on YouTube, and the winner is really based on the number of hits you get on YouTube. So if you are a singer or you know someone, you can do it yourself or let the other person or group know about this competition. We are proposing a federal government for the people of Israel and Palestine, and we are simulating and showing how a federal government will be able to thread the needle, meaning that it would be able to pass legislation that would be acceptable, because we are, under our formula, we are giving a veto power to the Israeli and the Palestinian governments over legislation that violates their sovereignty. So we are showing how a federal government could do that, could pass legislation that would be acceptable to the Palestinian and the Israeli government, that they will not be able to veto. We are asking you to ask as many questions as possible. Nasir is not with us today, so he will not be able to administer the question, but you can ask the questions. I encourage you to ask as many questions as possible, because your questions will clarify to you and others what it is that we are proposing. And so please ask as many questions as possible, but refrain from just arguing. If you want to argue, wait until the end, and then we will have a question and answer, and you will be able to demonstrate or tell us your skepticism. But we are asking you to be constructive and ask constructive questions during the simulations, and we encourage questions. Here is a short video that explains what our formula for peace is, and for a federal government, it's only about 2 minutes long.
The conflict between Israelis and Palestinians has endured for generations. And instead of time healing the wounds, it's only caused the anger to fester and the violence to grow. But what if there was a way to alleviate the tension? Something that may not outright solve every problem, but at least create a forum that encourages a peaceful compromise. Welcome to the Israeli Palestinian Confederation, a common third government between the Israeli and Palestinian citizens, specifically designed to foster peace, tolerance, and economic prosperity between the two nations. Here's how it works. First off, both Israel and Palestine will keep their respective governments. Israel's Knesset and the Palestinian National Authority will remain unchanged. The Israeli Palestinian Confederation, IPC, will be a third entity acting as a unifying agent between the two. The IPC will comprise 300 parliament members elected from 300 districts in Israel, the West Bank, and Gaza. Above them will preside a president and vice president, one Israeli and one Palestinian. In order for the IPC to pass a law, it will require a 55% majority from its Israeli representatives, as well as a 55% majority from its Palestinian representatives, thereby preventing either side from monopolizing the legislature. Of course, the IPC won't undermine the political power of either the Israeli or the Palestinian government. At any time, Israel or Palestine may veto a law passed by the IPC. If neither side vetoes, the law is passed. And the two nations are another step closer to resolution. Please help us make this a reality. The Israeli Palestinian Confederation. We might speak different languages, but we all mean the same thing.
So we are actually simulating what was in that movie. Before we get to the actual simulation, let's have a survey and ask you to vote right now. Do you support a common federal government for the people of Israel? So if you can please vote on this issue, and we will compare the vote that is taking place right now to the vote that will take place at the end of the simulation. Please vote. Are you in support of a federal government for the people of Israel and Palestine? Please vote yes or no. If you vote no, if you don't think so, vote no. If you think yes, it's a good idea, vote yes. If you think that it's not a good idea, vote no. I think that even if you are skeptical, you should vote no. I think that if you don't understand what it is, I think you should vote no, because when you vote yes, you are positive that yes. Okay, let's have 5 more seconds for people to vote. All right, publish the vote. We have 16 out of 18 voted yes. That's 89%. And 2 out of 18, that's 11%, voted no. Hopefully, at the end of the simulation, we will have the 2 that voted no change their vote to a yes. We are defining confederation and federation in the same way. Confederation and federal governments exist worldwide to address specific conflicts. Some governments refer to themselves as a federal government, while others use the term confederation. Definitions are not fixed and evolve with changing realities. In the context of Israel-Palestine, the IPC defines confederation and federation as a shared government for the people of Israel and Palestine, guided by democratic principles outlined in the IPC's constitution, which can be found at ipconfederation.org. That's the first website that I showed you. This is the heart of the simulations. You will have to assume from now on that for the purpose of the simulation, that we were able to obtain major funding. When I say major funding, somewhere around $100 million to explain to the people of Israel and Palestine the benefits of a federal government, to recruit parliament members and to recruit candidates for parliament and candidates for president and vice president, and to create a platform so that the people in Israel and Palestine will be able to vote using their computers, using their friends' computers, using computers in the library, using their phone and friends' phone. We have enough technology now to make sure that we identify the person and the person is who he says he is, and he is in the area that he says he is in that area. So that's the first assumption you will have to make, is that we were able to obtain that major funding to create the platform and the election. The second assumption that you will have to make is that we have given 14 million people the right to vote with the exclusion of children. So people in Israel, the West Bank, and Gaza will have 3 months to vote, not 1 day, but 3 months to vote. You will have to assume that we concluded the election just now, and 5 million people voted, that 3 million Palestinians voted, 2 million Israelis voted. You will also have to assume that the president of the whole area, nationwide, Israel, Palestine, received 1.5 million votes. To assume that me, Joseph, was elected as president. I never intend to run for president. I'm not even qualified because I am not a resident of that area, but it makes it easier for me to conduct the simulation as if I am the president. And you'll have to assume that a Palestinian lady received 1.3 million votes, and she will become president in 2 years. I will become vice president, but each of us has constitutional duties throughout the 4 years. One is president and one is vice president. You will also have to assume that that we elected 300 parliament members in 300 districts. Each district encompasses 47,000 people in the constituency. 47,000 people. They could be 47,000 Palestinians, could be 47,000 Israelis, or could be 47,000, some Palestinians and some Israelis. What I'm trying to say is that this system allows Palestinians to vote for an Israeli and Israeli to vote for a Palestinian. So before I go to our guest and ask him his opinion or questions, let me ask you, the audience, do you have any questions regarding these assumptions? Because from now on in the simulation, we are acting as if these assumptions have been achieved. Does anyone in the audience have any questions regarding these assumptions? Okay.
I do. Joseph, can you hear me?
Yeah, John, hi.
Hello, nice to meet you. What about the idea of sovereignty? What can be said about the two countries' sovereignty under this proposed formulation?
Yeah. Under this proposed, the Israelis will continue to have their government, and the Palestinians will have their government. So if you're an Israeli citizen, your government is the Israeli government. If you're a Palestinian government, your government is the Palestinian government. We do not determine the sovereignty of each government between themselves or the totality of each government's sovereignty. That would be up to them. Just so that you understand, John, we think that the Israeli and the Palestinian governments are the problem. They are not the solution. So we are not here to define their government. We are here to compete with their government, to compete with their sovereignty, and we will give them a veto power only if we violate, only if we think that we violated their sovereignty. Any other questions? All right, hearing no other questions, let's go to our guest, Professor Raz-Chen Morris.
Hello, good evening from somewhere outside Jerusalem. Nice to meet you all.
Professor Morris, do you have any questions or comments regarding the assumptions that have been presented to you?
I'll start with some comments, and I think that my questions or will come up through these comments. If I understand correctly, the scheme, I'll start before that. I completely agree that the confederation or some sort of a solution that eventually will bring these two nations into a place of cooperation is probably at the end a real solution. I don't think that the Palestinian entity can survive on its own. I think that the Israelis have lots of difficulties, both geographically as a small country and with the resources, the limited resources. This cooperation is almost the only viable solution. My question is about this idea of sort of a supreme government or of the confederation, and the way that it is just at the moment just a space for negotiations and trying to be an arbiter between the two governments without with very limited power to enforce or a solution. And it depends quite a lot on the goodwill of the two governments, of the Palestinian Authority and the Israeli Knesset. And without their cooperation, it will have very little space to maneuver or to take responsibility. And I think, and that's my big question, is how to make this goodwill not just depend on the goodwill. How can a confederation actually operate, take steps, and enforce its decisions? And what I find really, in particular, a place to ask that is on the question of natural resources, on land, water, etc., where the struggle over these resources is at the heart of the conflict. And exactly how can the Confederate government resolve this is a place that I wonder and would like to hear more about.
Professor Morris, do you have any problem continue with these simulations, accepting these assumptions as a reality for the purpose of the simulation?
I can understand the logic of the simulation, and I accept it. I accept that we have the possibility or the reality of this election campaign, that people will go out and vote, and the president was elected. And I can see the logic of this scheme. I just wonder about.
Are you willing to accept those assumptions for the purpose for this game that we are playing right now, starting this?
Yeah, I accept this assumption. As I said, I see that they are logical. The moment I accept that there is funding and that people go out and vote, this is all make sense.
All right. So let me just respond to I think your main question is, why would the Israeli or the Palestinian governments have the goodwill, as you said, to cooperate with the federal government? And the reason is that it would be in their interest. The federal government is is under these assumptions is the only legitimate government in Israel, Palestine. It's not the Israeli government is not elected by the Palestinian people. The Palestinian government is not elected by the Israeli people. We are, from now on, during the assumption, we are the only legitimate government in Israel, Palestine. And because we are the only legitimate government, we have legitimacy to demand that certain laws will be accepted by the people of Israel and Palestine. And the reason that we can demand it is not only because we are the only legitimate government and because we receive legitimacy, it's because it benefits the people of Israel and Palestine. So we are showing this simulation how we can pass legislation that would benefit the people of Israel and Palestine, including on issues of natural resources that you mentioned, and it would be in the benefit, the interest of the people of the Israeli and the Palestinian governments and their legislative body to accept our legislation. All right, so let me, so now we are in the simulation mode. I am the president. We elected the president. We need you, the audience, to act as either Israeli or Palestinian parliament members. So this is the area of Israel-Palestine. You'll need to decide whether you are Israeli or Palestinian parliament members, and you will have to remain intellectually honest throughout this simulation in your representation of your district. Are you an Israeli representing a district that is mostly Israeli, or mostly, are you a Palestinian representing a district that is mostly Palestinian, or are you in a mixed district? So please make up your mind at this time and vote how many Palestinian parliament members we have and how many Israelis. So if you are a Palestinian parliament member or an Israeli, please vote. And Professor Morris, you're also welcome. In fact, you're encouraged to decide whether you're Israeli or Palestinian parliament members, because in this simulation.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so I'm giving you 10 more seconds to make your decision whether you're Israeli or Palestinian parliament member. All right, go ahead and publish the vote. We have 8 out of 8 Israeli Palestinian parliament members. I think this is one of the few times we have more Israeli, and we have 11 Israeli parliament members. So I'm asking you to remain intellectually honest throughout the simulation. You are the parliament members. You represent a district of 47,000 people. I am the president of the whole area, and I'm going to be suggesting legislation. Now, we also need a person to act as Israeli Prime Minister. I spoke with Jeff ahead of time. Jeff, I saw you here. Can you say hello?
Hi, everybody.
Okay, so you will be acting as the Israeli Prime Minister. So that you know, Jeff will be acting as if he is the Israeli Prime Minister. I know him on a personal level. His personal opinions or point of view are completely opposite of the Israeli Prime Minister, but he is acting as if he is the Israeli Prime Minister. So don't get angry at him on a personal level. He's only acting as if he's Israeli Prime Minister. John, are you willing to be the president of Palestine?
Salam alaikum, yes.
Okay, so we are demonstrating how this thing, so we have Jeff and John as the representative of their government. Now, John and Jeff, you are not an Israeli in the parliament. You cannot vote in the parliament. You can only veto the legislation, but you are not given the right to vote. All right. So let's go to our first order of business, and that is the Constitution. We are ratifying the Constitution of the whole area. This is a short version of the Constitution. John, would you be so kind as to read it out for the people to
Yes, certainly. We believe that Palestinians and Israelis are entitled to equal rights under the law and guaranteed human rights and freedom. The Israeli Palestinian Confederation does not intend to supersede or supplant the Palestinian or Israeli governments, nor to abrogate or undermine any agreements between those governments. We recognize the need to work with the Israeli and Palestinian governments. Our purpose is to resolve conflicts and to expand the relationship between Palestinians and Israelis in a fair and equitable manner. Very well written. I have to apologize. I had a stroke last year, so my speech is a little bit labored.
You're doing well. Thank you, John.
Shall I continue?
Yes, please.
Okay, I think I was here. We believe in equal rights under the law, guaranteed human rights and freedom for all. We voluntarily give the legislatures and the governments of Israel and Palestine veto power over legislation we pass relating to the domain of control of those governments. We believe in the separation of power between the legislative, the executive, and judicial branches. We believe in the creation of a permanent secular government for all of the people residing in Israel and Palestine. We believe in having a separate judicial branch relating to IPC, Israeli Palestinian Confederation legislation, with Israeli and Palestinian judges, with a system to avoid biased decisions based upon nationality.
Thank you. So bottom line is we do not intend to supersede or supplant the Palestinian and the Israeli government. Whatever agreement they make between themselves, we are constitutionally required to accept that agreement. So if they decide to agree on a two-state or one-state or any other agreements between them, constitutionally, we are required to recognize and abide by those agreements. If we pass legislation that violates the sovereignty of the Israeli or the Palestinian governments, we give them a veto power. We are constitutionally required to give them a veto power. So before I go to Professor Morris, does anyone have any questions regarding the Constitution? Any questions? Okay, hearing no questions, let's go to Professor Morris and hear your comments or, well, you know what, before we do that, Professor Morris, let's ratify the Constitution. We are elected, the parliament members. You ran as parliament members stating that you accept the Constitution. You need to ratify the Constitution, otherwise you will be expelled from the parliament. Palestinian parliament members, please ratify the Constitution. Palestinian parliament members.
I don't know which I am because I'm the prime minister now of
You're not in the parliament. You cannot ratify the Constitution. You're in a separate government.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, publish the vote. 100% of the Palestinian parliament members ratify the Constitution. Let's have the Israeli parliament members please ratify the Constitution. Israeli parliament members, publish the vote. all of the Israeli parliament members ratified the Constitution. So let's go to Professor Raz-Chen Morris and get his opinion or questions regarding the process that he's just observed.
I find the Constitution, the principle of this Constitution, very palatable and acceptable. I think maybe the one place we need further clarification is taking into account that this is the legitimate government of this land between the river and the sea, as it is known.
Mhm.
What is the status of the separate government of the Palestinians and the Israelis? How are they fit in this? What kind of legitimacy they have vis-a-vis the Confederation that is, as you said before, the only legitimate government in this area. How exactly this triple relationship work out?
The Constitution basically says that if our legislation violates the sovereignty of those governments, they get a veto power. But as you will see later on, we are the one who decide whether we violate their sovereignty or not. So we do not define the Israeli or the Palestinian government. Personally, as the president, I think that those are illegitimate governments in Israel, Palestine, because they are not elected by the people of Israel and Palestine. We recognize their power, but we do not recognize their legitimacy because they are not legitimate. We are the only legitimate government in Israel, Palestine, because we are the only government that gave the entire population an opportunity to vote, and we were elected by the entire population. All right, so now that we passed a constitution, this is a momentous occasion in the history of humanity. There has never been a legitimate democratic government based on a constitution elected in the area of Israel and Palestine. This is the first time in history that the people of the area of Israel, Palestine elected a federal government and voted and ratified a constitution. And it is a momentous occasion that undermines the existing government's use of fear and hate to justify their actions. It removes the collective stigma against the Israeli and the Palestinian people that we are incapable of making peace and that we are here to fight each other forever. It gives me, the president, and you, the parliament members, huge political capital to demand that the Israeli and the Palestinian governments will pay attention to us, and the governments of the world will pay attention to us. It compels the governments and other organizations to contribute financially, to contribute to our success, and it gives the Israeli and the Palestinians new self-image and proves that Israelis and Palestinians are not a monolithic societies, because not all Israelis and not all Palestinians voted. That means that we are not a monolithic society. So congratulations, this is a momentous occasion. And as the president, I intend to spend the capital that we obtained through this election and the ratification of the Constitution. So our first order of business now is granting a veto power to the separate governments. Do we have a volunteer who wants to read this legislation? I can, if not, I can do it. The Confederation is the government of the entire population of Israel and Palestine from the river to the sea. We recognize the Palestinian and Israeli governments are seeking their cooperation to implement our vision for peace by giving them a veto. So, Professor Raz, if you can see, it says here, we recognize the Palestinian and Israeli governments, but it doesn't say we recognize their legitimacy. We will do our utmost to satisfy the essential needs of each other governments. We are pleading with the Palestinian and Israeli public to understand that while we would like to pass the best legislation possible to improve their lives, under these constraints, a perfect legislation is not possible. That's because we give the Israeli and the Palestinian government a veto power. We hereby bestow a veto power relating to legislation affecting the sovereignty to the following: the government of Israel on issues in which it is indispensable. In other words, it doesn't get a veto power on everything, only on issues in which it is indispensable. The Palestinian governments on issues in which it is indispensable. In the event of change in the entirety of the Israeli or Palestinian governments, this legislation may be amended or repealed subject to the IPC constitution. The parliament will decide on indispensability. Vetoes may be bestowed individually or collectively. In other words, we are the one who decide whether the Israeli or the Palestinian governments are dispensable or indispensable. So if we pass legislation regarding the use of land, then they are indispensable. Regarding police force, they are indispensable. Removal of the wall, they are indispensable. However, if we pass legislation regarding our budget, ratifying the Constitution, our Constitution, or appointing ministers or judges, they are dispensable. They do not get a veto power. Why do we give them a veto power? Because a veto power provides a safety net to both sides. When they have a veto power, they can relax. They can understand that if the issue violates their sovereignty, they have a veto power. It increases the likelihood of Israelis and Palestinians participating both in as voting and in the government. It decreases the Israeli and Palestinian government's opposition. They can't say, oh, this government or this institution or this scheme, as Professor Hen called it, is intended to undermine our government. We do not intend to. We give them a veto power. It removes any claims that the IPC has subversive intentions, and it gives legal protection to candidates. So the candidates cannot be arrested, cannot be accused of undermining the Israeli or the Palestinian government. And it compels the IPC to thread the needle, meaning it compels us, because they get a veto power, it compels us as a separate independent government to pass legislation that, in this case, John and Jeff would not be able to veto. It creates a platform for negotiation with a deadline. All right, so let's go back to the legislation. Before we go to Professor Morris, do we have questions regarding this veto power legislation? And by the way, the Israeli and the Palestinian government do not have a veto power over this veto power legislation. Any questions?
What does it mean vetoes may be bestowed individually or collectively?
It means that if, for example, we are voting on an issue and we believe that one of the governments does not have the power to block us, we're not just going to give it a veto power because we gave the other government a veto power. We're gonna make our policies based on the reality on the ground, not just to be even with both sides. So if, for example, we believe that the PLO government is not relevant to an issue, we do not give it a veto power. If we believe the Israeli government is not relevant to an issue, we will not give it a veto power, just to be conceived as if we are fair to both sides. We don't do that.
Mhm.
Any other questions? All right, hearing no questions, and you can always ask in the future. Let's have the Palestinian parliament members please vote on this legislation. Palestinian parliament members. We need 55% of the Palestinian parliament members to vote yes on the legislation. Please vote. Okay, publish the vote. We got 9 out of 9, 100% of the Palestinian parliaments who voted in favor of this legislation. Let's go to the Israeli parliament members. Please vote, Israeli parliament members. Do you support this legislation to give a veto power to the Israeli or the Palestinian government? You need 55%. We already have 100% of the Palestinian parliament. Please publish the vote. 89% of the Israeli parliament members voted in favor of this legislation. So this legislation passed. We will give a veto power to the Israeli and the Palestinian governments as we see fit, whether they are on issues in which they are indispensable. All right, let's go to the first legislation, and that rebuilding Gaza and southern Israel. John, you're going to have a veto power on this. So do we have a volunteer to read this legislation?
I'll read it if you want.
Please. Oh, hi, Charles.
Rebuilding Gaza and southern Israel. The IPC is the only legitimate government in Israel and Palestine, consisting of 300 parliament members elected by the entire population. Approximately 125 members represent the destroyed areas. The IPC is committed to the well-being of all people, including the 5 million individuals directly affected by the violence since October 7th. The IPC believes that the future of the Gaza and Israeli people is interconnected. It is unlikely that the Israeli and Palestinian governments will be able to restore a normal, peaceful existence in the foreseeable future. The IPC is requesting a $50 billion grant from the international community, which includes Israel and Palestine, to fund and coordinate the rebuilding of the devastated areas. The IPC will prioritize the following. 1. The IPC is calling for an immediate ceasefire and the immediate return of all political prisoners in Israel and Palestine to their homes. 2. Rebuilding thousands of homes, roads, hospitals, civic buildings, and infrastructure to facilitate the immediate return of all people to their homes. 3. Restoring law and order and civil society that have been destroyed. The governments of Israel and Palestine are dispensable and not granted a veto power on this legislation.
Well, the reason you're not given a veto power, although we will ask your cooperation, is because we have the funding. We will be getting the funding, and they will have to accept, in order for them to accept help from us, they will have to accept the legislation. So let's, before we go to Professor Morris, does anyone have any questions regarding this legislation?
May I?
Yes, you are the president of Palestine, John.
Right. Well,
what is your question?
My question is this. First of all, I think this is a wonderful idea. I'm 100% behind the provisions of this proposal, but I'm wondering if the Confederation could create and appoint a NGO or other institution to receive the grant monies and administer them in this case, as I'm acting as Palestinian Prime Minister, I still recognize that in many real ways, Israel is a dominant economic force in our region. So I'm just wondering if
All right. So as the president of the whole area, I totally reject your proposal, because we are not a second-class entity. We are elected by the people of Israel and Palestine. We have legitimacy. We will not agree to give an entity that was not elected superior rights to a government that was elected. We are a legitimate government. I was elected by 1.5 million vote. We are a completely legitimate government, and we will not agree to turn over our funding to an NGO that has not been elected, is not legitimate. What we could do, and what I intend to do, in order to facilitate the other countries and giving them assurances, we will be willing to use the World Bank to help us distribute the funding and monitor our activities. But we will not create another entity and give it superior rights to a legitimately elected government. Professor Morris?
Thank you. I find these measures very necessary, and obviously this is an immediate task for any government or body that wants to take charge of this region. It's such a sort of a Marshall Plan, let's call it, is one question that is left open, and that is, it considers the material basis, the building back the homes, the roads, the hospitals. It's not so certain exactly about the borders, how can people be living side by side after so many horrors that took place since October 7th. And there's should consider how to manage such a cooperation of the two nations. I think that
We're
after
not
World War
asking for cooperation of the two governments. We are asking for the two governments not to interfere with our activity.
but the people on the ground, people will go back to the refugee camps in the Gaza Strip, or going back to the kibbutzim and villages, will need somehow to cooperate and to trust the other side while they are rebuilding the roads and the houses.
There is no other side. There is only one side. We are the one side. We are basically calling for the Israeli and the Palestinian, and I'm going to do that right now. Mr. Prime Minister of Israel, are you going to interfere with our activity to collect funding and to spend it on the people of Israel and Palestine?
The government of Israel encourages the IPC to assist in rebuilding, and any part of the $50 billion grant that you choose to share with the government of Israel, we would accept and appreciate that. However, on point number 2, rebuilding thousands of homes, it's essential that the local Israeli municipal councils control the permitting. In other words, they decide on the city planning and the building codes not the IPC. The IPC can do the building, but it's got to follow the city planning and the building codes. But there are even larger problems that the Israeli government has with this. Point number one, it calls for an immediate ceasefire. And the government of Israel will not accept a ceasefire as long as Hamas exists. What Hamas did in October 7th loses any of its right to exist. And so until Hamas is gone completely from the Gaza Strip, we will not accept a ceasefire. And as of point three, restoring law and order, the government of Israel understands that there has to be some entity that controls the law and order in the Gaza Strip. But we need way more understanding than these 11 words on how this will happen. There have been many proposals for who can be in charge of the law and order, which are unacceptable to us. So until that point three is clarified, we have a problem. So the bottom line is, as this stands now, the Israeli government has to veto it. However,
you're not given a veto power. There is no veto here.
So what did you ask me?
I'm asking you, are you going to interfere with our activities?
Well, we're not going to do a ceasefire, so I guess that will interfere with your activity.
Right. So as long as you continue with the war, the people, you are interfering with the people of Israel and Palestine. And as the president of the IPC, I will try to work with you to agree to a ceasefire. However, if you do not agree to a ceasefire, and if you continue to interfere, I will do whatever I can to make sure that your government will not continue to exist, that there will be a government in Israel-Palestine that would cooperate with us and assure us that there's not going to be an interference, because we are benefiting the Israeli and the Palestinian people alike.
It is true. The government of Israel does understand that this will benefit the people of Israel and Palestine. However, there are parts of it that will not. Calling for a ceasefire while Hamas still exists is not something that the people of Israel will accept.
Well, Mr. Prime Minister, you've had over a year and a half, and actually, ever since Hamas has come into power, you had time to deal with Hamas, and you haven't been successful. So you want to drag us into your failed policies, and we refuse to do that. What if Hamas said that they will not cooperate? What if Hamas said they will not cooperate until your government ceased to exist? The reason we created our own federal government is because of your government and Hamas's government and the Palestinian government failure to give peace to their people. You're both failure.
Well, we don't think we're a failure because we've made a lot of progress. But the bigger issue is that the government of Israel is delighted to talk to the IPC about strategy and security. However, this is not the appropriate venue to do that. We only do that on venues such as Signal.
All right, let's go to the Palestinian, Mr. President of Palestine. Are you going to interfere with our activities as to benefit the people of Palestine and Israel?
In principle, we will not stand in the way of any activity that fosters peace and understanding. But I would like to propose a preliminary exercise to answer the concerns of Professor Ken Morris and Prime Minister Warner. Suppose we were to recognize Gershon Baskin's effort to put together a trust-building commission and move from that to truth and reconciliation process, with the truth process taking place as usual under a blanket amnesty provision. Under such conditions, I believe I could guarantee that all members of Hamas would come before the commission.
Oh, that could be done, but it has nothing, it's not relevant to what we are trying to do, rebuilding Gaza and southern Israel. Like we said, under our constitution, any agreement between your government and the Israeli government is acceptable to us. But we are a legitimate, independent government in Israel, Palestine. We are obtaining $50 billion, and we do not want to derail our efforts by creating other artificial efforts. Whatever effort you want to do between Israeli and the Palestinian government is fine with us. But what I hear you saying is that you're creating some condition. We do not want any condition.
Well,
I think that what maybe is lacking in this declaration is three things. One, who has the power to restore law and order? Who will be the police force, the people who protect the building sites, etc., and guarantee that the money goes to the right places and prevent corruption, which is always quite often the case with these big international efforts to bring prosperity to conflict within the regions or natural disasters. The second issue is really about creating trust. And the third issue is how to guarantee that there are no evacuation and exile of people from Gaza. How to prevent the sort of Trump idea of evacuating these 2 million people and building something outrageously bad taste on the shores of the Mediterranean. And I think this is a crucial point, because there are forces in Israel who want to evacuate these 2 million people and kick them out. And this is something that we need to, I think, maybe stress, that this is to protect the people who are now living in the Gaza Strip, as well as to protect the Israeli villages and kibbutzim, who I'm sure some forces in Israel have already new plans for them.
All right, so let me respond to that. The one way to prevent corruption is to make sure that the funding will be handled through the World Bank. We're willing to do that. I have no problem for the funding to go through the World Bank. The World Bank has handled major issues. We don't have to be, we do have to be concerned about corruption, but we should not be concerned to the extent that we will not do anything just because of fear of corruption. We have to deal with corruption. The second issue you raised is the question of trust. The question of trust has been ameliorated by creating a system of transparency. We have Palestinian and Israelis in the parliament together. We need Palestinians and Israelis to vote together under the Constitution. So we are not based on trust. We are based on transparency. As far as exiling the people from Palestine, from Gaza. I am the president. It's in my interest. The people that are residing in Gaza are my people. They voted for me. It's in my interest to protect them. The Israeli and the Palestinian governments have not been able to protect them. And we will stand up to any government, whether it is the American government or Israeli or Palestinian government or Egyptian government. No president in the world will agree to have other governments take part in exiling its own people. And I am the president. I will not allow that. All right, let's go to the Palestinian parliament members. Please vote on this legislation. Palestinian parliament members, do you support this legislation? Okay, publish the vote. We need 55%, 86% of the Palestinian parliament members voted in favor of this legislation. Let's go to the Israeli parliament members. Please vote on this legislation. Israeli parliament members, we need 55%. Publish the vote. We got 80% of the Israeli parliament members. So now, as the president, I am empowered to try to obtain this funding from governments all over the world. And we will use our financial and moral and legitimate power to spend the money and to prevent the Israeli and the Palestinian government from interfering with our support of our people in Israel-Palestine. Let's go to the next legislation, and that's joint economic zone. Here, the Israeli and the Palestinian governments are given a veto power. Charles, could you please read this legislation?
Joint Economic Zone, JEZ, between Israel and Gaza. Exclusive IPC management and control and cooperation with the existing governments. Common economy. Education, industry, banking, agriculture, sewer treatment, desalination, solar farms, wind power, and green energy. An international airport and seaport, equally accessible to Israeli and Palestinians. We hereby submit this legislation to the Israeli government, the Palestinian governments. We bestow upon them a veto power which may be exercised in the next 60 days.
Okay, so for this legislation, the Israeli and the Palestinian governments have a veto power. We want to create a joint economic zone. We want Israel to contribute land and Gaza to contribute land for that joint economic zone to build all of these wonderful things together: education, industry, desalination plants, international airport, and seaport. Does anyone have any questions regarding this legislation before we go to Professor Raz-Chen Morris?
Yes, I have a question, please, Joseph.
Yes,
hi, good to see you again. I'm concerned about when you talk about land ownership, that much of the land is under enormous controversy and disagreement and claims. So will you first have some sort of truth and reconciliation and reassign land back to its presumable former owners? Or will you be giving land that isn't yours to people? You understand what I'm trying to get at here? It's just the whole thing is so controversial in terms of the zoning. Israel, for example, in Oslo took over all of the Area C and zoned only 0.5% for Palestinians. In 1967, East Jerusalem, only 13% was zoned, and it was already fully built on, meaning that Israel has been eating Palestinian land since probably, pre-48. Are you in a position where you can administer effectively land ownership issues, get that solved first, and then start talking about whose is what?
Well, this is
Maybe
a
I can.
different, this is a different legislation, different subject from what is being presented at this time. Here we
Okay.
are saying, we are asking the Prime Minister of Israel and the President of Palestine to attribute equal land for the purpose of calling a joint economic zone. You raise an entirely different issue. It's a significant issue. It needs a lot of thinking, and it needs a smart and wise legislation to deal with those issues. I am not capable on the spot to come up with such a legislation. It needs a lot of thinking. What I suggest you do is write the Constitution, write the legislation, and we will present it. But it's a different issue than what was being presented right now. Sean?
Okay, okay, thanks.
Just one question, Joseph. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay, look, just the one question. Well, you're putting this joint economic zone and you're spending money on doing all these great things, but what happens if there's another war that's gonna recur in the future between Israel and Gaza, and that joint economic zone you put money into it will be destroyed from the war? Like, I understand this is a great idea, but what happens if there's another war that happens and then destroys this joint economic zone and just burns it to the ground? Yeah.
Look, we can't give you a guarantee, okay? We can incrementally change the area. We think that the likelihood of having another war when there is an international airport, an international seaport, and you have passengers and planes arriving on a daily basis into a international airport that is serving the needs of the Israeli and the Palestinian people and serving the needs of the Israeli and the Palestinian economy, that reduces the likelihood of a war. Now, could there be a war? Yes, these governments they love wars. They are, we are trying to prevent them from having wars, and we are trying to get legitimacy from the people of Israel and Palestine and give them an option that would allow us to be in competition with their government and demonstrate to the people of Israel and Palestine that we have a good system that would benefit them. But I can guarantee you that there will be no war. All right, let's have the vote, and then we'll go to Professor Chen Morris to give his opinion on joint economic zone. Palestinian parliament members, please vote.
Palestine would like to assure the protection of its mineral rights.
Wait, you have not been given a veto power yet. Palestinian parliament members, please vote. Publish the vote. 100% of the Palestinian parliament members voted in favor of this legislation. Let's go to the Israeli parliament members. Israeli parliament members, please vote. We need 55% of the Israeli parliament members. Publish the vote. 90% of the Israeli parliament members voted in favor of this legislation. Mr. President of Palestine, are you going to veto this specific legislation?
No, not if we have our mineral rights guaranteed.
Or are you going to veto this legislation regarding the joint economic zone that will be managed by the federal government?
Can you hear me, President Avasar?
I hear you, yes. And you added a qualification to your veto. And I'm saying your veto, your qualification doesn't really apply to this legislation.
Well, we are not going to veto, but felt that we needed to raise that concern in the aid of the validity of the simulation, that's all.
All right. Okay, let's go to the Prime Minister of Israel. Mr. Prime Minister, are you going to veto this legislation?
The government of Israel is strongly in favor of joint economic zones. They work fine in the West Bank, and we approve of this. There are two issues on this. A very small issue is that we worry that building solar farms in a limited area of the joint economic zone takes up so much space that it's an inefficient use of that space. But that's not why we would veto it. The bigger problem is the international airport and seaport, and we worry that about the controls on the import of weapons, because the Hamas has a history of importing weapons, and Hamas and other terrorist groups, and we want to make sure
we're not Hamas. We are a joint.
Yeah, but
we are a government for the whole area. Israeli.
But it says it's equally accessible to Israelis and Palestinians.
Correct.
And so we don't want that equally accessible. We worry that equally accessible access for Palestinians will allow them to, the terrorist factions of the Palestinians, of which there are many, will allow them to import weapons.
It doesn't say unrestricted. It says equal. Okay.
Well, what we're asking for is a better clarification to make us comfortable that the controls on the import will be such that there will be no weapons imported.
We can give you that assurances. We can give both you and the Palestinian president that assurance that we have no, we will make sure that weapons will not be entering that area, and it would be used for economic and civil purposes and peaceful purposes only.
In which case, the government of Israel supports the joint economic zone.
All right, thank you. Let's go to Professor Raz-Chen Morris and have his opinion regarding this, what he just saw on the joint economic zone.
I think that obviously joint economic zone is a most welcome enterprise and project. But I think that in some of the questions that came up before point to certain difficulties that concern the fact that after 48, Gaza was severed from its agricultural hinterland and water sources, and bringing now this cooperation, there will be need also of the Israelis to share these resources or to assist Gaza with finding this agricultural backup and other natural resources backup so it could strive and not face against the same difficulties of poverty and shortage that it suffered from since 1949 onward, being a poor and overcrowded place. And the joint economic zone should take that into consideration, how we assure the welfare of the Gazan without harming the welfare of the Israeli who already established themselves in the last 80 years as a prosperous area.
I'm not sure exactly. You say generally it's a good idea, but somehow it's related to Israel's history with Gaza.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure whether you're bringing that up as a possible obstacle or something that we should be
something should be considered, something that should be taken into consideration in bringing agriculture, sewer treatment, desalination plants, etc., that it will provide the Gazan what they lost 80 years ago, and kind of make amends to the losses of to prevent it from, or to assist it to get out of it being a poverty-stricken region of the world, one of the most crowded, most of the poor. It should take into consideration the fact that there's 2 million people there that will need jobs and economic security. And this project, I don't know if it's big enough to contain that. If it's
I see. All right, let's go to the next legislation, which will be the final legislation, and then we'll go to open discussion. And here, again, the Israeli and Palestinian governments are asked not to interfere, but they don't give a veto power. Charles, could you please read it?
Making peace with Iran, Lebanon, Yemen, and Syria. We are the parliament members of the Confederation Government of Israel and Palestine. We are the only legitimate government in the region. Our people have experienced wars and violence for over 100 years. The Israeli and Palestinian governments have failed to bring peace to the people in Israel and Palestine. Therefore, we are taking the initiative to protect all the people in Israel, Palestine, and provide them with peace. To achieve this, we are forming our own delegations to directly meet with the authorities in Israel, Palestine, Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, and Iran for the purpose of making peace in the region. Our intention is to demand that all these governments and entities agree to cease violence and threats against each other and work towards a lasting peace and work as a facilitator and promoter of peace between these governments. Our goal is to be fair and objective and to expose any governments or entities that pose a threat to our people.
So we are the government of Israel, Palestine. We have Christian, Muslim, and Jews in our government. We do not want to be under constant threat. We do not subscribe to the idea that one government is the Israeli government or the Palestinian government, or those governments are better than the other. We subscribe to the idea that we need to explore what's going on and call out on the government that is being too aggressive and unwilling to give us peace. So we are forming our own government, our own delegations to go to these countries and discuss the issues, including not only these governments, but also the Israeli government. And we are asking for the Israeli and the Palestinian governments. We don't need their authority to do so, but we're asking them not to interfere. Does anyone have any questions regarding this legislation before we take a vote and go to Professor Morris? All right, let's take a vote, and then we'll go to the Israeli. Well, before we take a vote, Mr. Prime Minister of Israel, are you going to interfere with us forming our own delegations to go to all these countries and to negotiate peace and to find out what's really going on?
The government of Israel supports any efforts for peace in the region, and we will support these as long as it doesn't, as long as your efforts don't undermine the security of our government and our people. So we support this.
If we travel to Iran, to Lebanon, Yemen, and Syria, will you ask your Attorney General to criminally prosecute our members because we go to an enemy country, enemy from you, not us, but your enemy?
No.
let's go to the president of Palestine, Mr. President of Palestine. Are you going to interfere with our efforts to make peace with all these countries?
The Palestinian people are grateful for having moved so far into cooperation and a lasting peace with the others in our confederation in Israel, the homeland of the Jewish people. We are grateful for the common defense agreement that we have entered into, and we would like to suggest that we discuss along with these initiatives, these diplomatic initiatives that we express, that we would like to discuss with the president of Israel. Should there be anyone else who is part of this mutual defense initiative? Any other country?
We're not preventing you from discussing the president of Israel. We are asking you, are you going to interfere with our effort to send delegations to all these countries?
No.
All right, thank you. All right, so let's go to our parliament members. Palestinian parliament members, please vote on this legislation. Palestinian parliament members. Publish the vote. 100% of the Palestinian parliament members voted on this legislation. Let's go to the Israeli parliament members. Israeli parliament members, please vote. Publish the vote. 100% of the Israeli parliament members voted in favor of this legislation. Let's go to Professor Raz-Chen Morris and get your comments regarding the legislation we just passed.
The main question is, as peace with Syria and Lebanon we'll have to negotiate borders, and with even though Israel annexed the Golan Heights and now conquered other parts of Syria, in the Golan and the Hermon and other places, and Lebanon demands some border corrections which are disputed. Then the question, what will the Israel government have to say about that, whether in making this peace between the Confederation and these Arab states, border corrections will be needed. Another comment is that we miss here Iraq, and I think we should add Iraq, who in 48 and 67 did participate in a war against Israel, and I think it's still in a state of war with Israel.
So you think we should add Iraq to this list?
Yeah.
Okay, I agree. But to answer your question, we don't really know. We want to find out. We don't necessarily have to believe what was presented to us. We want to talk to these governments and find out what are the real issues, and then find out if there is a way to make peace between those countries and Israel, and to have assurances that that peace would last. We are not getting into the substance of the peace. We are just creating a delegation to go and find out what are the real issues and have an honest conversation.
I think with Lebanon, I don't know what the real issues is, but they are demanding certain border corrections. And with Syria, the Golan Heights, at least until the fall of the Ba'ath regime, was a major point of contention. And Israel already completed the annexation. It's today almost unthinkable about Israeli withdrawal from the Golan Heights, but it's an issue that needs to be resolved. And
Well,
here
is that
the
the only issue, or are there other issues? I mean,
I think it's a major issue. I don't
if
know
we
if
go
it's
to Syria and we speak with the Syrian government, what are they going to tell us? We want to find out. We don't want to hear it from Israel what the Syrians are going to tell us. We want to go to Syria and find out what they have to say, and then we go back to Israel. And so, all right. I think we exhausted this issue. I think we basically demonstrated. Okay, let's go to
I think what
Angela Godfrey.
Yeah.
Goldstein.
yeah, I think
I just wanted to add to what Professor Chen Morris was saying there, is that in Syria and in Lebanon, you have the refugee camps, and they are a huge problem for the Syrians and the Lebanese and for the Palestinian people, and therefore they are not going to want to solve with us, whether it be with the Confederation or the Palestinian government or the Israeli government, until that problem is solved. That's how I understand it. I may be wrong.
Look, we believe everything is solvable. We also believe that everything is not on the table. We're not told what everything is. We believe that those governments, the Israeli, the Iranian, the Syrians, the Lebanese, they are not being forthright with the people of their country and with the people of Israel and Palestine. We want to expose what's going on before we recommend a peace solution. That's all. All right. So let's now take a survey, post-simulation survey. After participating in the simulation, do you support a common federal government for the people of Israel and Palestine? You have 10 more seconds to vote. Do you support a federal government for the people of Israel and Palestine? Please publish the votes. 19 out of 19 voted yes. There is no vote, no vote. So that's excellent. I'm just curious to see the two that voted no, are they here? And did you change your mind? And can you please recognize or tell us who you are? I'm just curious to see if you change your mind, and if so, why?
I changed my vote.
You changed your vote from no to yes?
Yes.
Okay. What was the reason that you changed your vote from no to yes?
It'll all come out in the wash.
Okay.
That's an American idiom. It means I believe that problems or challenges will be worked out in the process.
Right. Who is the second person who voted no? I'd be curious to hear from him or her. All right. Okay. So now that we achieved what we want, demonstrating, let's go. I just want to make closing remark, and then we'll go to open discussion. I believe that a common democratic government, confederation government, can bring peace. We can have, in other words, all the issues that were presented in the assumptions are achievable, easily achievable, in my opinion. We haven't heard anyone in this simulation saying that this and that is not achievable. I think that all of these are achievable. We can make peace. Israel is spending $3 billion almost a week on the war in Gaza. and that's been going on for a long time. The governments of Israel and Palestine are not legitimate in that area, and we need to have a legitimate federal government in the whole area of Israel, Palestine to bring peace. So let me stop sharing and let's go to open discussion. And let's have Professor Raz-Chen Morris make his remarks, and then we'll have open discussion and questions to Professor Raz-Chen Morris.
I completely believe, together with you, that democracy can bring peace, and that's for me, it's undisputable. The only question is that I still find, with all the other minor questions, but I think the major question is the question of power. Sovereignty cannot, and the power to enforce laws cannot depend on rational interest of the government of Israel or Palestine. As we can see in the last so many years, lots of irrational decisions and or that don't represent, I think, the better interest of the nations were taken for partial interest of specific groups at the expense of the general of the Commonwealth of the and that, I think, is a major power. Our confederate government can maneuver between conflicting governments that these governments have the power, have the police force, have the army to resist or to take other directions than the federal government suggests. And then we have all the little problem. I think there's lots of little problem, quote unquote, from the refugees to the question of compensations, to the questions of land and natural resources, and the way that people in Israel will have to give up certain rights in order for the Palestinian to have some sort of ability to live on a better state than they were until now. And maybe another question is, coming to this agreement, I think that there is a moment that Palestine is still lacking independence. Although there is a Palestinian Authority, it was in a way never fully independent. They are not coming to the table equal to the Israelis, who have already a state and they have the power to implement, to legislate and to implement these laws. So I think this sort of inequality needs to be addressed somewhere along the line.
Professor Chen Morris, let me ask you a question. Let's assume that we are in 1947 and you have the knowledge and experience that you have now, but it's 1947. And you are asked the question, do you think that we should have an Israeli government, a Palestinian government, or should we have one government for the whole area, a democracy, not a Jewish government, not a Christian or Muslim government, one secular government for the whole area of Israel, Palestine? Using your knowledge and experience that you have now, what would you recommend?
I guess that I would, and I think that possibility was on the table in 1947, and a one-state solution, a binational with one government, would be my preference. It might have solved lots of problems if there would be a truly goodwill on both sides to create such a government.
Well, isn't this really what we are proposing? One government for the whole area of Israel, Palestine?
As I said, I'm completely supportive. I'm just saying that there's two difficulties concerning the political situation. I'm not talking about history and compensation and refugees. One, that this government needs some power to enact its will, to fulfill its will. And the second is that unlike in 47, now in 2025, the Palestinians come to the table without independence, whereas the Israelis have already an independent state. And this sort of inequality should be addressed somehow in the process of creating this government.
As far as power, you mentioned power. Does power come from military or does power come from legitimacy?
I think that it comes from both. Power without legitimacy is just tyranny, and legitimacy without power is ineffective. And I think that to create, and I think we learn that from.
But could you give me an example of a government that has legitimacy but no military power that is ineffective?
I think that the League of Nations or the UN, who try to kind of coordinate the world and create another arena for peaceful negotiation, again and again, you see how inept they are without an ability to enforce
That's not really a
the decision.
government. It's not really a government. It's
Because governments of the nation states that we know have usually both legitimacy and army or a police force to enforce their laws. People don't obey laws because the government has legitimacy to legislate it.
I agree. Yeah, that's within the functionality of the country. All right. Does anyone have any questions to ask Professor Chen Morris, or comments to ask? Let me ask you this. Did the simulation strengthen your opinion or change it in any way regarding what we are proposing?
I think I would say, honestly, it strengthened my support because I can see the benefits of such a direction. And as I said, the two-state solution as a final compromise is complicated. I'm not sure it's viable. And the confederation that will make it possible to redistribute and the sources and resources of this country between the people, so both nations can benefit from this beautiful country that can be a real gem in this area. A confederation is I think the viable solution. I wonder just about exactly how to reach there, and second, how to make it an effective political body.
Do you see Israel as a Jewish state remaining viable as a Jewish state for a long time, or is Israel as a Jewish state on the ropes, basically, that is about to be, I don't want to use the word destroyed, but getting close to being crumbling?
I'm much concerned about the future of Israel as a Jewish state. I think that Jews do deserve self-determination, just as the Palestinian and just as any other group, national group on the globe. The way that the term that the Jewish state, it's a long list of decisions, and sometimes bad decisions, sometimes decisions that seem to be the good direction, but turn out to be more complicated, brought us to a place where Israel as expressing the national sentiments of the Jewish people, whoever they are, is no longer viable. It doesn't do it anymore, and you can see it with
Is the risk to Israel as a Jewish state, is that internal or external, or is it both?
I think mainly at the moment it's internal. It's internal because, as we saw just recently with the government inviting a radical right, basically neo-Nazis, to talk about anti-Semitism, severed the Israeli government from the interest of the Jewish people around the world. After so many years that Zionism claimed to be representing the interest of the Jewish people. And I think that's already undermining the legitimacy of Israel, and undermine legitimacy will also undermine its power and its ability to defend itself. As I said, we cannot have legitimacy without power and power without legitimacy. We need to find a way that both of them work together. And I think that a confederation that will rechange the relationship between Israel and the Jewish people in the world, but will make it a more clear and well-defined relationship. Maybe the law of return will have to be changed. Maybe it will be some sort of other way that Israel will express the Jewish people's right to self-determination. But it has to change. The way that it's going now, it's that we lose on all sides.
What, in your opinion, based on you living in the area, what percentage or what segment of society in the Israeli society, and for that matter, the Palestinian society, although you are not Palestinian, but maybe you can express what segment or percentage of that society truly want peace, as opposed to nationalistic that want this conflict to go on?
I think, that's a very difficult question, and very hard to estimate. The experience of the last 18 or 19 months shocked the mental constitution of both nations, of both Jews and Arabs, of both Muslims, Christians, and whatever. And there's lots of hate, there's lots of distrust, and but my big hope is that eventually the understanding that the only way to exist in this area is through peace and cooperation for both nations will dawn on people. I remember after 73, I was 10 years old, but I remember lots of, it took some time for what is today considered left, the Labour Party, to understand that actually territory doesn't guarantee existence, and to come to support of withdrawal from the Sinai to make peace with Egypt. And I think after the first Intifada, certain segments understood that we cannot control the Palestinians, which brought to the Oslo Accord. And maybe after the big trauma of October 7th and the continuous trauma of the war and the bloodshed and the people will come in a year or two or after the war will end to realization that a peaceful solution should be. At the moment, maybe 20% of the Jewish people are supportive of peace as a, I think about 40% or 35% are nationalistic fanatics. And the middle ground think we cannot trust the Palestinian, therefore no compromise, and somehow return to this idea of managing the conflict that brought us into this disaster.
I notice, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the idea of peace has totally been gone from discussion. The Israeli politicians are not being asked to express their vision of peace. The Israeli media does not discuss peace. I haven't seen anybody really in the last 10 or 20 years expressing any sincere vision for peace. And
Indeed.
my question to you is this accurate? And if so, why is it so?
It's very accurate. It's something that I myself noted, and I think this is actually Ehud Barak's great success in the way he managed the negotiations in the year 2000 and the way he
Ehud
brought
Barak
this.
was the prime minister of Israel.
Yeah. And he went to Camp David to force an immediate peace, a complete peace agreement with Yasser Arafat, which was premature and brought us the second Intifada that brought an end to the Oslo Accord and to the hopes of peace, and kind of convinced the majority of Israelis that there's no partner. And that was, I think, Ehud Barak's great success. And since then, both obviously the Israeli right, but also the Israeli center and center left abandoned the idea of a peace process and started and adopted the idea of managing the conflict like a sort of a chronic disease. We cannot cure it. We can from time to time need some sort of harsh chemotherapy and nothing will, and to just continue our lives. And that was exactly what Sharon did in 2005 with the withdrawal from Gaza, and Netanyahu for many years, that was his policy. No major wars, from time to time some little operation, let's kill 2,000-3,000 people and keep the region quiet as far as we can. And that's what brought us to this moment of disaster of October 7th.
John, you have a question?
Yeah, please. I just want to mention, I was the Charter Secretary of the United Nations Working Party on Restorative Justice in 1997, and I'm a Quaker and a pacifist who has been active especially in the field of restorative justice, but also have convened a large consortium of people who I recognize do peacemaking work around the world. Several of them are Palestinians and Israelis, including especially Mazin Kumseya, who has recently been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. And I've put forward a tentative rough outline for a transitional justice process for Palestine and Israel. It's on my Facebook page. And I would like folks in this group to know about that, because I'm strongly motivated by lifelong relationships with Jews and Israeli people, in particular, a Holocaust survivor who was very dear to me in my childhood. But as a Quaker, I've pulled together this consortium called John Woolman College of Active Peace. I'm also the author of a theory called the Theory of Active Peace. And so I'm hoping to make connections with some more of you, and Joseph, to assist your efforts however I can, because you and I have, I think, been moving in parallel somehow and not knowing that much about each other's work over the years. But I very much respect what you're doing. Thank you for all you're doing.
Oh, all right. Thank you. Walter, do you have questions for our guest?
Yes. What in your opinion will it take to get the hostages released?
I think the deal is very simple. I think that, and it's something that at the moment the Israeli government didn't try really to achieve, and that's suggesting some sort of a solution to the situation, which means what kind of force will enter the Gaza Strip instead of the Hamas, and therefore will enable the end of the war, and to find some sort of an agreement with the Hamas to make it back into a civil organization. I don't know, exile is a military fraction, whatever deal they can make, but there's no such deal on the table. The Israeli government actually refuses to think about the day after, and is trying to prolong the war, and therefore no complete solution to the hostages, which is for me a very sorry situation, very sad.
I just wish
So
that Hamas would just surrender and plead for mercy, and see what Israel would do to that.
I think the Hamas will. I think there is a possibility of some sort of this kind of surrender if there is another force, a joint Arab force, an international force, whatever, that will enter the Gaza Strip and take it over. And just as and Israel done it before in Lebanon with the PLO, and I guess it could have been done. But as time lingers on, the Hamas feels stronger and stronger. It regains its status. It doesn't. If I think 6 months or 7 months ago, or Israel will come up and say, "Okay, you surrender. Your leaders are free to leave to Turkey, to wherever, Qatar, wherever accepts you, and we are bringing in a joint Jordanian, Egyptian, Saudi force, whatever." That would have been, but today, why would the Hamas want it? The Israelis promising to kill whoever and promising not to accept any surrender.
I just
and
don't.
actually
I just don't
provide.
I just don't think that Israel's going about this in a proper way. More and more innocents are dying, and more destruction is taking place, and we're not seeing any progress.
Yeah, the Israeli government is since day one of this violent eruption is going the wrong way. It never stated any aims to the war. Never stated anything. Okay, we are going into this war and we will stop the fighting if the Hamas surrender. If they will say on October 8th, something like that, there will be some sort of legitimacy to the war. It won't be just vengeance. And I can understand psychologically, and I was in Israel also, the vengeance was a very strong emotion on October 8th. But a government shouldn't go with its emotion. It should be a rational policy. The only hope is that more and more Israeli secular soldiers will find a way not to go to the army. I don't think there'll be a refusal, declarative refusal, but I know that lots of young people in their 20s and 30s, from all kinds of reasons, I don't think most of them do it for moral reasons, but for all kinds of reasons, find ways not to go to reserve duty. The numbers are growing and the army knows it. That's why at the moment the military operations are quite limited. But the government can't care less. As long, and that's I say. But I hope that
I find that hard to believe. I find it hard to believe. Thank you.
That's
Heather?
Thank you. Thank you, Yosef and Raz. Raz, in your estimation, how much of what is going on with the genocide in the West Bank, further incursions and violence, has to do with Netanyahu's predicament, his legal predicament, and really, in other words, and also the military enrichment by corporations, investors, not only in Israel, but in the United States, UK, and whoever else is involved. You know, there's a book called, I think, Palestinian Experimentation or something like that. You know, when you look at those two factors, Netanyahu's predicament and the military development and testing that goes on, if Israelis and Israeli supporters and other Jews around the world were given a different message, would it change? So how much of this genocide has to do with these factors that are either enriching or promoting, or, you know, they're secondary factors? So, you know, could folks get off of this sauce, in other words, if they were given a different message?
Like what? What kind of message?
The message that Palestinians are subhuman, they must be eradicated, they're terrorists, we must get rid of them. You know, the whole message that supports the genocide and supports getting rid of Palestinians.
and I think that Netanyahu's legal predicaments are just a superficial motive. I'm not an expert on Netanyahu's psychology, but I think that sometimes in the mid 2010, Netanyahu started to aim on ruling Israel. I won't say autocracy as an autocracy, but ruling Israel on his own for as many years as possible, and maybe even has some sort of fantasy of having one of his descendants coming after him. Maybe, and that's here I'm going into speculation, thinking of himself as some sort of a King David. The predicaments just enhanced his willing to break down the legal restrictions that he had as a prime minister. It happened already in 2019 with the endless election campaigns that actually proved to him that he can control the country without a parliament. There was, I think, for about 18 months, there was no parliament in Israel. We just in a continuous series of elections. And then at the moment there was a government, he took care to topple it down as quickly as he could, only to go to another election. He lost these elections and then did all in his power to regain power. And this time with the help of the crazy Nazi, fascist, whatever you want to call them, national religion, to take over Israel and to break down any restraints on the executive power of the government. That's the way it clashes with legitimacy, and that's why this whole situation became very complicated. At the moment, whoever control Israel are people who support genocide, and they managed to convince lots of people who, after October 7th, that this genocidal, dehumanizing Palestinians is the correct way to go. And I think the other side humanizes Israelis at the same moment, which I encounter in all kind of conversation with people, friends from abroad. And there's now the moment it's kind of became, the Israelis don't see the Palestinians don't see the Israelis. We see all each other as monsters. And that's support by the American administration. I think Biden wasn't strong enough. I don't know why. Maybe I'm not an expert on American politics. Trump obviously likes this idea of bullying and let the stronger one win, and the winner takes it all. And in such a state of politics, what we see is a human tragedy unfolding in Gaza.
Kumiko?
Yep. So thank you very much for everything. I just enjoyed very much. But no, the other day I happened to watch YouTube interviewing series titled "Speaking to Israel About the Palestinians" by, I think, Hamza Zaadah. So, who is living in San Francisco? Okay, who is he
was interviewing people on the street.
He was pardon?
Interviewing Israelis on the street.
Right. And then I was, to tell the truth, I was just in for shock, really. And so just young, sweet girls, not only, girls, but also IDF soldiers. Okay, they just, to me, hard to believe, beyond my word. And so they are just insane to me. Just okay. And so the way they describe Palestinians, that's really hard to believe.
Miko, are you asking if they reflect Israeli society, or are you asking what?
Yeah, I think that's the bottom line. Is just matter of the education and it's okay at school, and also in military training. They learn a lot of things about the and Jewish history from the maybe only, I don't know, ignoring other Palestinian history. And so I was really shocked, and also I was scared that future generation, although Professor Morris said that there will be more and more young people who tend to refuse military service, to serve military, but still I think so when I listened to what the young people said to the interviewer, and that's really it's they just grow up with that kind of mentality, and so that's a product, future product, And then so they don't learn about empathy, okay, and also tolerance and things like that. Just the universal value, common sense. Common sense doesn't do any good for them. Just fuck you, some 4 letters and the things like that. And then one IDF soldiers, I remember what he said. Okay, just I will if you sit near me, I will kill you. And I look at his face, okay, and his eyes, really, he's ready to go. He's ready to.
Now, after that shower.
That was really.
All right, let's talk, let's have Professor, and then Alan, and then we'll have to close because we're getting to 2 hours.
I will say, first of all, the hatred and animosity between Jews and Palestinians in this little land has a long history, and we slaughtered each other for more than 100 years. Sometimes they slaughtered more of us, and sometimes we slaughtered more of them. It's a civil war and civil war is a war of bloodshed, the most horrible bloodshed is civil war. If we think about the Russian Civil War, the American Civil War, or in China, they're usually more notorious for their cruelty, and we have to understand that that's the situation here. It's people who live on the same land, lots of daily connections, and then when a surge of violence come about, it's slaughtering each other, children, women, old people. So having said that, what happened on October 7th strengthened to many Israelis some prejudices about the Palestinians, that they want to kill us, and they will have no mercy on us if we will be weak. And the trauma of October 7th is such that strengthened these sentiments, these horrible sentiments. And I agree with you completely. There's no empathy, there's no attempt to see the other as a human being, as somebody who has children, women, they're all the same. They are born like that, kill them all. For me, and I think that what I said about that lots of young reserve duty, not the standing army, but the reserve duty soldiers were trying to avoid going to the war. It's lots of personal reasons. It's not necessarily, very few, it's moral reasons. But the fact that they are feeling tired of the war, they don't want it. They want to go back to their lives. And is a point of hope that somehow will stop this atrocity from going on. I think about maybe part of the problem is actually the peace process of the Oslo Agreement, that in one moment separated Palestinians from Israelis. If before that, Palestinian workers were all over the place. You saw them in washing dishes in restaurants, in building sites. Indeed, manual labor, but they were present. You heard Arabic in the streets of Tel Aviv. Since then, this separation also prevented Palestinians from coming to know Jews. If all the Palestinians, people in the 40s and 50s, know Hebrew, the younger Palestinians don't know Hebrew. And that's something that is created maybe part or an aspect of this tragedy. So I think that some sort of a confederation that will bring us back to live together is the only way to
Right,
re-educate the people of Israel.
right. Alan, and then John, and then we need to close. Alan.
Thank you. As ever, very good conversation. The last comments, that really the situation, the politics has to be a turning of heart. Both peoples, and certainly the Jewish people, the Israelis, have been so distorted morally by what Zionism has done as a political mission for far too long, that there has to be some sense of a moral rebalancing, a coming to terms with an inner pain that somehow can lead to a turning of heart and seeing the other all of a sudden really as a partner in reshaping the whole sick situation. And in some way, I see this confederation in that view that people look at one another, how can we cooperate and work together? And that's what is the motivation of the confederation, which I fully support. And as I've said on a couple of occasions, now I hope the next step can be in Israel and Palestine, beginning to shape what are those 300 districts? How do people in those districts begin to see this turn of heart? How in our locality can we begin to cooperate to see who could we send to a legislature or a meeting place of cooperation? And I think we have to put what you are doing on the ground as best we can, me from far away, but this is a local program of people cooperating and beginning to see representation to a common cause of cooperation. So I hope you can find a way to put it on the ground, draw the boundaries, and then people who know people in any of those boundaries, we begin to encourage how can this process begin to operate on the ground, and then maybe that will help bring the $50 billion from the international funders. Okay.
All right, let's go. Okay, I don't see any more hands, so I think
If I can say two things that might be a little bit more optimistic. A friend of mine, Dov Chenin, is a major figure in the Israeli left. He told me a year ago, in the middle of the war, when I asked him why he's optimistic, he said, imagine yourself, you are a French resistance sitting in a cellar, hiding in a cellar from the Germans in 1944, and somebody comes to you and tell you, in 50 years' time, no borders, you go cooperation, complete cooperation between Germany and France, European Union, you would laugh in his face. And the other thing that I was thinking about is that in lots of Holocaust survivors reports, not a lot, there are reports that the one thing they remember is the German soldier that gave them some water when they stood in the line, or gave them, or sneaked them something to eat. They remember this act of humanity. And I think now, and lots of people, my wife included, who are trying to do these small deeds of showing that there is a way of empathy and collaboration. In all kind of NGOs and volunteer works, that people meet the other side, to see the other side as human.
That's wonderful thought. So, Professor, do you have any other closing remarks?
Thank you. I think this is as I said already, I'm completely supportive of this, and I hope I'll be able to help in making it real, because at the end, that's the way to solve this.
Thank you so much. So I want to also thank you for your time, your generosity. We met before, and your willingness to struggle with this idea and to be open to to our comments, and some of them, part of the simulation was, I'm sure, was not that pleasant, but I apologize for that. But I want to thank you for your courtesy, your generosity in giving us your time and your intellectual ability. So thank you so much, Professor Raz-Chen Morris, and thank you all. And I hope to see you in the next simulation.
Thank you, Joseph.
All right.